We are an interactive digital cinema and a social streaming platform. You get that more authentic engagement with the story and the storyteller. And what's really cool is for the filmmaker, they can reach millions of fans online. At the end of the day, you need a platform that allows for you to find your audience.
What makes you think you can do that?
My team understands the problem from both the fan side and the filmmaker side better than I would say anybody else in this entire industry. You're working with some of the biggest names in Hollywood because they are saying, you guys were spot on. You saw this coming. The model currently is no longer working. I used to have a great formula. Go to a film festival and the big streamer comes and buys it. They're not doing that anymore, so what do I do now? How do we deliver a premium experience for fans, or how do we create a no-cost way to reach the fans? And at Kino, we have solutions to both. We are going to be disrupting legacy industries in a way that we've never seen before. And we are very fortunate to be backed by Kathy and her team at ARC. But when we started chatting, I thought, you do realize that we're a pre-seed to seed company. They said, our whole philosophy as a fund is to back disruptors.
You can tell that you guys have a serious passion for this, and ultimately that's what really matters.
I feel very fortunate and blessed to be in this position that every day I get to wake up and I'm living my dream, which is I am working in film and TV. I get to exercise my cool economic side of my brain and my legal side of the brain and actually go, I know that this is tangibly solving a problem for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of individuals out there in the world whose livelihood depends upon this industry continuing, and I think should, because storytelling is important for humanity. I do think that it is an essential function of who we are.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Austin Worrell, the lawyer, entrepreneur, and tech innovator. You are the co-founder and COO of Kino, a multi-platform, interactive social cinema streaming app that is revolutionizing the film industry and how we consume content. Kino combines the power of social media and content streaming in one place, providing film and TV creators of all genres the tools to engage and monetize their organic fan base. You built this because you believe Hollywood is broken and that the filmmakers and fans are the ones suffering. Your mission is to reinvent entertainment by breaking down barriers between fans and creators to make movies interactive. Your goal is to make the industry more equitable, efficient, and engaging, allowing filmmakers to control their own destiny by empowering the next generation of stories to be told. Austin, welcome to London Real.
Thank you. I could not have asked for a better introduction. That was incredible.
It's great having you. I want to start by saying that Kino is one of our portfolio companies here at London Real Ventures, the world's first media-powered investment firm, where our mission is to transform the world by investing in cutting-edge Web3 and AI companies while giving our partners marketing exposure across the London Real media platforms and academies. We heighten awareness, create customers, and build communities by leveraging our global audience and extensive network. Austin, I am more than excited to be a part of this incredible journey with you, and I'm going to be a huge consumer of your product as well. So let's jump in.
Yeah.
What is Kino?
Well, you said a lot of words before, but let's break that down. I mean, so when Daryl, my co-founder, and I first founded, we met in a little coffee shop in Hollywood. He had sent me a sketchy LinkedIn message because folks in Hollywood are terrible at LinkedIn. Unlike tech, we have pristine LinkedIns. His said something about working on Netflix and Disney and Matt Damon and Jimmy Kimmel, and I thought, what the heck? We sat down, we started chatting, and I was studying entertainment law and startup law at USC. He had reached out because I had founded a cryptocurrency previously, and he was part of that community. He said, hey man, I've just been really thinking about Hollywood and how the system is broken and how we could build a platform to fix it. And so we started on day one with this mission of equitability that is only possible through technological efficiency, that's only really founded upon better engagement with fans. So if we sort of trace back to what you chatted about before, we are an interactive digital cinema and a social streaming platform. Today, when you go to www.kino.studio, what you see on mobile, on your smart TVs, and on your web browsers is an interactive digital cinema. And that's the first stop. The next stop is achieving a true Netflix meets TikTok experience. And we can kind of dig into each of those right now. But right now, if you go to Kino.studio, just a couple weeks ago, we did 2 digital premieres where the cast and crew got on, premiered their film for the first time. And it was like getting a Sundance or a TIFF or a Cannes or you name a film festival experience in your home, or the big Hollywood premiere on, Hollywood Boulevard at the Dolby Theater. Imagine that, but in your home now. And what's really cool is for the filmmaker, they can reach millions of fans online. And also for the fan, you get that more authentic engagement with the story and the storyteller, which is what we think is most important, because that expands the medium and allows them to break the noise. The internet's a really crowded place today, and so you need good technology, but it can't just be, let me throw AI at that, or let me throw blockchain at that, or let me throw just a better tech stack at that. You also need to reverse engineer the fan experience by understanding who they are and how they absorb media. And I'm happy to dive into all of those.
Yeah, look, this is a powerful idea. And, when you first came on our call and kind of pitched our group about what you were doing, I think I had the realization in real time that, wait a second, when I go to Netflix and watch something, I can't even post a link on my social media.
Yeah.
And it's like, and when I go to my social media, getting over to watch a film somewhere is near impossible.
Yeah.
And they're like these totally walled gardens in 2024. Like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
And when I watch something that I love, that I really get into, and I want to go deeper, man.
Yeah.
I want to hear about the actors. I want to hear about the writers. I want to see the outtakes. I can't get more. And so I'm just kind of left hanging. And then I float to the next piece of content, which I don't even know where I find it anymore. I really struggle. I was telling you outside, I literally ask my barber what to watch next. And I got to wait every 2 weeks because he's the only guy that seems to know what's up.
Yeah.
And I'm someone who talks to some of the coolest people in the world. I'm on all the social networks, but I still can't find a way to find great content. Isn't that crazy?
Well, if you think about the economic impact of that, if discoverability, and that is the key frustration of fans worldwide, including myself. And in a bit, I can share the story of sort of how we came to this realization. It was me sitting on my couch, but I'll save that for a second. If you think about that economic impact, if discoverability is the hardest part of the industry, not can we make a good film, not can we get the film out there to the world because we have video technology, not can we market the film because we have marketing technology, but how do you discover it? Well, that's all that really matters, right? At the end of the day, if it's not discoverable, because there's so much content now on the internet, and I can't do that efficiently, that means that you have an industry where only a certain films every year can break through. We're seeing this year. There are a couple films that have broke records. Inside Out 2, over $1 billion. It is now the highest grossing film, I think, of all time. It's at least Disney's highest grossing film of all time. However, the box office generally is down this year. And folks in the industry are starting to seriously question, is the movie theater by itself the only place where we can monetize a film? And the obvious answer is no, because culture has shifted, and then we can get into a second how the system was already built into a broken model because of innovative shifts that have gone on. And so what we like to say at Kino is that it's essentially a broken house built on shifting sands, and combined, that is just an impending collapse. So instead, we need to rebuild the house better and put it on a solid foundation. We believe that foundation is filmmakers first and fans first.
Okay. Where do we start? Do we start with this big assertion that Hollywood's broken?
I think so.
Also, you live in Hollywood and you understand it better than most of us.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us, we kind of consume what they throw at us.
Yeah.
And we don't know what we're getting or why we're getting it. We don't know why we're sometimes not satisfied.
Right.
We don't know why we haven't watched something good in 3 months or 6 months.
Yeah.
So maybe you can tell me, because you grew up in that world.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, so a little bit of the backstory on me is my big dream as a kid was to be a movie star. I grew up in the middle of Ohio, Cincinnati, which, by the way, they make a lot more movies there than you would anticipate. But that was my dream. I trained to be an actor. I was lucky I got to be on the big screen in a couple cool movies. No big parts or anything like that, but I at least got a taste
How old were you?
of it. I think I was 3 or 5 when I first got started. Yeah, I was in a couple commercials to start, and then started acting. And any film that would come to town, I would just, submit a self-tape, my headshots, my bio, all of that. And I got lucky to be in a couple cool movies. And I got to just see the magic. I mean, if you've ever been on set, there's such a magic. All these creatives in one space telling a story. And the story is not just the actor, and it's not just the director. There are folks that are putting together the wardrobe, the costumes. Actually, I think some of the coolest people on set are the folks that are building the actual sets and scouting locations, and the DPs, directors of photography, figuring out how every shot, or some of the guys that are working on lighting. I mean, the amount of people it takes to create a film is such a beautiful endeavor. And so that was sort of my first love, was film and TV. A week before college, I got a call from my dad. He said, "Hey kid, you're on your own, figure it out." My parents had founded a company. It got shut down by a lot of regulations. And so in that moment, I thought, probably not the right time to pursue acting as a career, because I felt this fire of, I want to fight against what felt like an injustice. And so I thought, I'm going to go be a lawyer, because if I'm a lawyer, I have this superpower where I can always fight against the bad guys, if you will. I can sort of rail against injustice through a career. I've got the skills and the training. And so fast forward, I sort of pursued that path and moved out here to London to attend the London School of Economics, went back to LA to study law. And now I find myself at Kino sort of at a blend of all three. I get to work with my first love, which is film and TV. I get to practice, law, in that this is a very legally complex industry. And finally, I get to look at the economics of film and TV. And so if we look deep into those economics, we see that at the end of the day, it is the filmmaker who is struggling because the current systems that are in place just no longer are built for the audiences that exist today. And so if we look at places like the theater, what do we say when we think about maybe a date night? Netflix and chill, right? Like, that's a common phrase. It's no longer let me go to the movie theater to take my date after a nice dinner, right? And I'm not here to say that's right or wrong. I personally love going to the movie theater, and I wish more people would go, but to think that that is the most viable economic pathway to monetize your film is difficult. And so when we think about that discoverability issue, it's really key to build a platform that users can first discover film and TV. But then also, if we backtrack and we think, okay, we have the studio system, we have independent producers, we have actors and directors. It's this love of film that transcends all, but then it's a labor of love between so many different parties with sometimes aligned interests, sometimes disparate interests. And so that can create this really complex machine that previously the sort of central source was the studio. But then the studios recently have really got into this grind of what I call short-termism, which is, for better or for worse, as a publicly traded company, you have to report to the street, you have to report your earnings, you have to report subscriber numbers. And so it was really this advent of streaming that brought about this extreme short-termism and thinking about the art form and saying, well, if we can create 5 more Marvel movies, we're going to be able to report certain earnings because we can predict that we're going to have fans come in the door like they have for the previous 4. And what we're all realizing is that we are quite diverse in our appetite for content these days. And that could be anything from a cat video on TikTok to a $100 million action movie on Netflix. And the reality is that both are competing for the exact same attention of every single human on the earth, and it's called the attention economy. So when we really sort of backtrack and we think we no longer live in a world where the only way to entertain myself is to go to the theater and watch the $100 million movie and I'm going to pay for that, I'm now deciding whether I want to sit on my couch in my pajamas and watch cat videos all day on TikTok. For me, it's more like really weird, geeky movies, or not movies, clips about how bridges were built. I don't know why the algorithm pushes that to me, but they do. Instead of watching the movie, right? And then if you can't discover the film, but your TikTok algorithm is pushing cat videos to you all day, well, then that's really bad for the filmmaker.
Yeah. Or you might listen to a podcast, which is like 2 dudes somewhere in a studio with maybe some Shure microphones that'll produce a 2-hour piece of content that, like you said, will have your attention the same as the Marvel movie. Which is wild. One costs hundreds of millions and one costs hundreds of dollars. And yet it's still the same attention, isn't it?
It's the exact same attention economy. And so really at the end of the day, you have to then backtrack and reverse engineer the economics behind each piece of content. And it's kind of eye-opening when you think about it in that way. You start looking and you think, okay, I'm deciding to spend my hour watching this video on whatever platform. And now I'm not allocating that time, that energy, those resources to watching the $100 million Marvel movie. And then that has trickle effects in that there are advertising dollars going behind that, right? Now the advertisers aren't playing their ads, so now the film is not being supported. Or I'm not subscribing to every single streaming service anymore because I just can't find anything I want to watch. All of that reduces the amount of revenue going into the Hollywood space. And so what we have to do is we have to address that and realize that that is where we are at. And that streaming was a part of the solution, but also a part of the problem in the way that they built that model out, because it was sort of, $15 a month, you can get unlimited content. Ultimately, that math doesn't add up. We joke and we sometimes call that boy math, which sometimes we as boys can be, not always the greatest at. We've got a great idea, we put it together, but that's the joke that we sometimes say, which is that at the end of the day, it's a great idea that you can get unlimited content for $15 a month. But the reality is that if every movie costs $100 million, it doesn't work. And so really we have to backtrack and think, how do we deliver a premium experience for fans that they're willing to spend on it? Or how do we create a no-cost way to reach the fans? And at Kino, we have solutions to both, which is cool.
Okay. Is Netflix unsustainable, though? Is that what you're saying?
No.
It's just not?
I'm not saying that Netflix is sustainable. And I think we could sort of phrase it like this. Let's play in a virtual town, right? A virtual town has multiple places. We've got the public square, right? We've got the movie theater, right? We've got the library. We've probably got Blockbuster in there. Let's go back in time a little bit. And then we got the house. Those are key areas for any virtual space, real space, for humans. That's kind of where we operate. The public square might be Twitter or X. It might be Instagram. It might be Facebook for you. That's where you virtually hop into community and you bump around with other people and you talk about stuff. And that's where you discover a lot, right? The movie theater is probably where you go to discover the coolest new movies, right? And unfortunately today, that isn't actually Netflix necessarily. And I'll get into sort of why that is. You might go to the library to get a book, or let's keep on with film and TV, you might go rent a DVD or something like that, right? Or you might go to a friend's house to watch a movie. And in those different key areas, there are different touch points for how a film might come to life. So the example you gave earlier, how you talk to your barber, well, that's sort of in the public square, or, the barbershop. Maybe I should add that to the list. The barbershop, that's where you discovered it. And then you want to watch that movie. You didn't discover it at the theater. You didn't discover the library. You didn't discover it at a friend's house, right? You discovered it through a public forum, which was the barbershop. And so there are key importances to each of those public places. And for us, we have built a digital movie theater. Because while a film or show is new and hot, you can deliver greater revenue out of it because we're all excited to see it. And we want to go spend a greater amount on it, which helps the filmmaker, right? Because at the end of the day, they're building a product that they need to monetize. When a film is much older and you're going back to, there's less economic demand for it, and so the price has to go down. And so in that regard, then, those are two key important aspects of any film's life. If we backtrack and then put the entertainment lawyer hat on, we call these windows, watch windows. This is the way the industry has always operated. Now we just have more windows than ever because there are more platforms than ever. But traditionally, we would put it in the theater to start. That's always where you start. The movie's hot. I can get people to go to the theater and watch it because they're excited and they want to watch it with friends or take a date or go with their family, whatever. That used to be the core reason and way for a film to launch. And then once that was done, then it would go out on DVDs and you rented a Blockbuster. Or let's go 5 years ago, it would go to Netflix or Amazon or one of the streaming services. And typically it would either get bought up and it would just live there forever in a library. And that was the modern Blockbuster. And that's where you could go and see it if you want, but you wouldn't own it and you wouldn't keep it. You just watch it for a limited time. And then often what would happen, either it would live on there forever, or it would then trickle down to the smaller platforms like a Tubi or a Pluto where it's free. So now I don't even have to pay a subscription for it. So as you can tell, it starts at I'm paying $20 for a ticket. I then pay $15 a month on Netflix. I now watch it for free and I have to watch some ads. But the film is still monetizing. It's the highest level at the theater, the second highest level at subscriptions, and then the lowest level on these ad-supported platforms. Or back in the day, we would put it on cable, right? And then ads would run. So there are different formats for each. The reality is that first one, gone. Unless you're Barbie or you're Oppenheimer, because it's a very expensive and lengthy process to market, to get people to get out of their chair and go to the theater. I live right next to a movie theater and I love film and TV. And I don't go that often. I'm ashamed to admit it. I should go more.
I don't like the theater anymore.
It's just,
I don't even enjoy it.
It's like if I got to go to the bathroom, I got to get up and I miss half the day.
Is that such an old man thing to say?
I know. I think I'm just getting old already and I'm only 28.
I can sit in the front, but it's still, I'd rather sit in front of my iMac and I can pause it.
Exactly.
It's such a grandpa thing to say, but I don't see the upside now.
So then we go, well, how do we still capture that first window.
Right.
Well, that's what we built. And Kino actually is German for movie theater. So to my German viewers, you would have known that already. It also means movie theater, cinema, and quite a few other languages. We did that on purpose. We are not building a replacement for Netflix. Netflix replaced Blockbuster, right? And they do an incredible job at that. If you want a reliable library of content and you like the kind of content you have, subscribing to them, being a member of their platform makes a lot of sense. And yes, they're going to have new releases and they're going to have a library of older content. And you know that if Netflix is your place to go, or Paramount Plus, or Disney Plus, or you name any streaming platform, that is my library to go, right? That is my library. And like we said, in that sort of public square of places to go, that's your library. And that's where you can go to find a reliable source of content. But for the new stuff that you're like, actually, I'm willing to fork out $10, $20 to see something that's cool and new, that's what we've built Kino for. But the reality is we can't just have folks show up because there is so much content on the internet. We need to deliver greater value. And so understanding that value proposition, particularly for Gen Z, I'm sort of a zillennial. I claim that I'm Gen Z, but a lot of my team also says I'm a millennial. I'm 28, so I'm right on the border, 96. So it's a hot debate. I'd be curious to see what the London Real audience thinks defines a Gen Z individual. Maybe that'll actually finally define who I am. But Gen Z in particular, right, is an audience that craves more authentic engagement online. We call it parasocial relationships. There was a great article in Variety actually a couple weeks ago talking about how social video is the preeminent viewing and entertainment experience for Gen Z and Gen Alpha particularly. And a lot of their parasocial relationships are digital in that they find community in others online. And again, I'm not saying that this is a good or bad thing for humanity. We can debate that, and I can talk about how I think more kids should get outside and play and, you know, play sort of tag and all of that. But the reality is digital is where a lot of our community happens, that sort of public square I was talking about. And so if we realize that, then we go, well, how do we recreate a movie theater online? Well, you deliver a really incredible viewing experience, which takes some cues from social media. Live streams are some of the coolest events on the internet. I think we're currently on one right now, aren't we? And so the cool thing is that at the end of the day, if you add in a live element where you're like, wow, my favorite actor's right there talking about his film. I'm going to see it for the first time digitally with him. And then add in a dual screen experience where you can ask a question on your phone. And then they say, we're about to give away the hat that I wore in the critical scene where I killed a bad guy. And if you click that button now, you can win it, right? Or you can record a video of yourself asking a question and it's going to be on the big screen next to my favorite actor. That creates that digital parasocial relationship that not only then justifies a premium experience. And I go, I want to go watch it on Kino now instead of waiting a couple years for it to drop on the library platform. Yeah. It creates that sense of, yeah, I want to go see it now. I want to support that filmmaker. I'm going to get value. I'm going to get an experience I won't get anywhere else. That's what's really critical. And then that actually helps to support the further windows because once it's launched on us, we give the data analytics to our filmmakers. They can take that data and they can say, hey, Netflix, hey, Disney, this is why you should purchase my film and it should live on your library. Right. And it's great for the filmmaker because they can actually show the value out of the data, but it's also great for Netflix and Disney because they can buy the films that they know are going to perform well in their apps. So the way we see it is that we are actually a helper to both sides in that there is this critical loss of the first window, which was the theater. And so how do we fill that void? We can't pretend like it doesn't exist because if everything's going to drop on libraries, how do I build out an economic model as a streaming platform to know what works and what doesn't? We actually have that now.
Okay, now we saw Netflix dipping their toes in. Joe Rogan did a live show on Netflix last weekend, I think. It was, the time zone was off here, so I didn't watch it live, but I watched it the next day, and it was really exciting because it was even exciting for Joe, because, you know, if you're a comedian, I think you typically will do a few nights and take the best, but that's a lot of pressure, which makes it more exciting. He did some crowd work at one point because someone was shouting, and I was like, damn, this is live. So like, it takes, you know, someone as gangster as Joe to be able to even go there. And it was exciting. Obviously, the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight was scheduled for this summer to be live, and I think it's still going to happen. That's Netflix dipping their toe into live, but it still is missing this social engagement or parasocial engagement that you're talking about. And they'll probably never get there. And all these library platforms look the same, as in they look like they're these separate online libraries that don't have anything to do with the way I engage socially, or don't have any engagement really. So when you saw that live thing, is that a good thing to see? Does that compete with you?
Great question. I mean, I'll also make note, this is something that it's kind of like seeing the FedEx arrow and the FedEx logo And if you have no idea what I'm talking about to the audience, take a look at it. There's a little arrow. You'll never unsee it ever again.
Yeah, pretty cool.
This happens when you look at streaming platforms. You do notice that most of them look very similar. What are they? They are rows of posters. Now, go back 10, 15 years ago, I was really kind of too young to remember, but I'm gonna pretend like I can remember. I can remember a little bit going with my parents. That's the same as a Blockbuster shelf.
Yeah.
Right? That's all that they are. They're Blockbuster shelves in digital format.
Yeah.
We've gone well beyond that. Now, that still has a place and a role in society, and that this is the library of content. However, you can't pretend like that shelf.
It's terrible.
You can't pretend like that shelf is the exact same thing as a theater. They're two separate things. And so realizing that then allows for us to build an incredible platform that says, hey, to the user, we're going to deliver a theatrical experience, but in a digital format. And so then you ask, okay, live, I actually think that's a great thing, because the reality is that the more that we have live events online, the more that we're drawing community, the more it becomes a standard way for us to build those parasocial relationships, and we start to embrace them. But I also recognize that at the same time, these are library platforms. That's who they're built to be, right? They can partner with platforms like mine, but at the end of the day, it takes a lot of effort to reinvent yourself as a company. And just on a core economic basis, these platforms are built to be libraries. That is how their economics, that is how their model is built. That is what they're reporting to the street every quarter.
Yeah.
And so knowing that then allows for us to focus on our lane, which is that first window, and being the best platform for filmmakers to launch their film and or for fans to discover those films. And in focusing on those lanes, we then realize that we're actually a partner to industry, that in many ways, yes, we're disrupting, but we're disrupting in a way that we go, this actually goes hand in hand with the current outlets that are out there. Because if we go back 20 years, Blockbuster and AMC have some areas where you could argue they compete. They're still competing for the attention of the user, but also they're completely separate businesses. One's a theater and one's, a library renter, right? So in that way, when you start to see that, you realize the internet's a big place and we actually need both.
Right, okay. So I like the fact that you're not competing with them, and they are library networks, and they're always going to be that, because a lot of them are associated with studios.
Yeah.
So what do they have? They have a whole catalog of movies, and Netflix has now become one of those. They didn't start that way, but now they have effectively, because they bought all this content or licensed all the content. So I would think they behave very similar to a Disney or Hulu or whatever these streaming things are.
They do, yeah.
Now, along come you.
Yeah.
Now, you rolling up, 28 years old, saying, I'm going to disrupt the Hollywood film industry.
Yeah.
I mean, oh my gosh, that must go over, not so well, I would think, in LA.
Yeah.
Or tell me, does it?
Yeah.
I was told in tech one time that a product has to be 10 times better in order to be adopted as a disruptor.
Yeah.
Is that true? And what is the reaction? Even if you tell people we're here to compliment you. And I actually believe you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, that's hard to do, isn't it? This is a huge industry. And a bunch of old school Hollywood guys, I can see their look and their place in the Malibu, and their old school producers are thinking, you're not going to mess with my business model. It's the innovator's dilemma all over again.
Yeah. Well, first, incredible book, Innovator's Dilemma. And also, if we dig into that, we recognize that it is the startup that has the advantage when there is a true problem at the core, right?
Yeah.
And we can look to, I think that one of the examples that they give in the book,
not just the advantage, but the ultimate winner is the startup, right? Because they can't change even as much as they want to, because they're tied into those revenues, right?
Exactly.
And the old school model, even if they want to change, they can't.
Yeah. I mean, also Why Incumbents Fail, another great read on sort of the current problem. And so if we actually think from that lens, then we recognize that there is a lot of power in being solely focused, we say obsessed, that's the word we use, at Kino, being obsessed with the problem for the filmmaker and for the fan. Not obsessed with how do we persist a business model that's existed for the past decade or decades or century, if you're one of these true legacy companies, right? And they keep buying each other up, they keep merging, unmerging. My favorite recently is, and I love Warner Brothers. They've made incredible classic films. I've gone to the lot many times. Incredible company. Warner Brothers Discovery, top analyst on the street a couple of weeks ago said, I think we should split out the streaming business. They just merged, was it even 2 years ago? And now top analysts on the street are saying, maybe we should go back, right? And there's a great article, I think it was in Hollywood Reporter, that talks about how mergers and acquisitions are not going to save this town. Two companies that are struggling to disrupt, to innovate, to shift with the shifting sands and rebuild the house that was originally broken. Two of them merging together doesn't fix the shifting sands or the broken pieces in the house, right? What they need to do is take a deeper critical lens at who they are, how they're delivering media to their core fan bases. And they will figure that out in time. They have brilliant individuals. But the reality is, for someone like us, who's uniquely focused on the problem, we're small, we're nimble, it means that we can also take a really cool approach. And I think what's great about my team is you have me, I'm trained as an entertainment lawyer. And so I deeply understand the complexities of this industry in a way that it's pretty rare, actually. You'll meet a lot of producers and a lot of executives who might be so narrowly focused on one aspect of the industry that they actually don't have a sort of macro overview on the complexities of windowing and the legal rights that go behind each one, and sort of how fans can actually absorb your content and the sort of legal complexities with that. And so when we take that approach and then combine that with my co-founder Daryl, who's an executive producer and has been a writer and created shows with some really cool individuals at top platforms and has that experience, we sort of founded this company on both sides of the aisle. Me saying, hey, I've been trained as an institution man. I know how the system works. I know where the brokenness is in the house. You, as the creative, as somebody who's reached the heights of success in the industry, know the shifting sands, because as a creative, you know your fan bases, you know storytelling, you know how to tap into it. And so when you combine us together, we can take a really radical approach, which is that at the end of the day, the industry doesn't just have to just go away in the way that like Uber replaced taxis. It's that there's actually a place for studios, and there's a place for libraries, and there's a place for movie theaters, and there's a place for fan engagement. And all of those are critical. And if we all put the pieces in order, we can then actually build out a really successful plan for every film that launches in the market. And in that way, every filmmaker can maximize their revenues across the board. They can create scalable models. They can have successful careers. We can see employment numbers rise in the industry. And by the way, that goes down to the catering services and folks that you would never even think about in LA that are relying on this industry to keep going. And so if we don't figure out a way to maximize revenues per film, you're going to see a lot of people that have to leave town and leave the industry. And so the question is sort of, how do I come in and say, hey, we've got some great ideas for how to fix this? It really is listening to the problem, understanding it. There's a great book, The Startup J-Curve, and they talk about how some companies found, because they just have this crazy cool idea for something, and everybody goes, yeah, let's hop on board, right? I think TikTok is a good example of that. TikTok wasn't founded because we said, there's a problem, we need to watch people dancing in sweatpants. That's what we really need. No, it was like, this is a cool, we're gonna sort of lip sync to music videos, people are gonna dance, and it grew into something crazy. And it grew into something massive, right? That's one area. Then you have other startups that go, I actually critically understand a problem, and I'm gonna build tech around that. And in that way, it's gonna be disruptive, but not in a way that bumps elbows and shoulders and said, hey, I'm here to shut everybody else down, and we just wanna be the one and only. It actually says, hey, I have a critical approach. I understand the economics. I understand the parasocial relationships. I understand the key players. And if we reverse engineer and build a platform with better technology that can serve and create solutions to the problem, in that way, you can then win significant market share without having to sort of decimate all of your competitors, right? I'm not saying that this is business at the end of the day, right? We're gonna have friendly competition. We're gonna have hard competition. It's been a battle to get to where we are today. But what I think I'm really proud of my team for doing the best is we understand the problem like nobody else does. I've gone to so many film festivals over the past 2 years and listened to individual filmmakers, producers, distributors, studio executives, folks from the top to the bottom. And I've understood what their current problem is. And a lot of it centers around the same thing. One, discoverability is the core problem for fans. And so if they can't find my film, I have to spend tens or hundreds of millions of dollars to market to them. And I can't do that with every single film I've got. I don't have that big of a balance sheet. I don't have that big of a budget. So at the end of the day, that's not sustainable. Two, the model currently is no longer working. I used to have a great formula. Put it in theaters, sell it to a streamer. Put it in theaters, sell it to a streamer, put it on Tubi. Put it in theaters, do DVDs, put it on cable, right? Like all these models. And now I'm realizing that that just no longer suffices. Or go to a film festival, it's the coolest thing it can, and the big streamer comes and buys it. They're not doing that anymore, so what do I do now? Let me say, well, that's where tech comes into play. And we're actually here to fix your problems. And we want you to go get that big Netflix deal. We want you to put it on Tubi in the future, but start with us. Launch, be successful, build your fan base, go sell your film, and rinse and repeat. And you're gonna now have a solid process where we now take that first vertical, We give you the data analytics. We give you the tools to most efficiently tap into fan community. You're going to have a successful launch. And then you can still go on and be a Netflix film or be a Tubi film, whatever else you want to do, because we recognize that that's how the industry works, is we have multiple stops on the train path for every film. And when you think from that approach, it then becomes this really cool, beautiful concept technologically, which is that at the end of the day, our job is to crush our lane. If we crush our lane, then we actually are very successful and we help the rest of the industry become more successful.
Okay, yeah. But it's primarily for independent filmmakers and getting their films out there as opposed to helping the big studios or helping anything else.
So yeah, this is always a fun question, because what the heck is an independent filmmaker? You know, it's such an interesting question. So if we really go back into history, and I'm a big history geek, my master's is in history and economics, and so it's sort of just where my brain always lives. Let's go back to the 20s. I live in Culver City in LA, which is where the first studio was built. It was the MGM lot. There's this beautiful colonnade that's still there today. It's the new Sony lot, or it is the Sony lot now. Back when sort of Hollywood was first founded, right, we had these major studios. And then you would have some smaller companies or individuals create films. And there was this concept of like the big five. And then there was the independents, who were not your MGMs or your Warner Brothers. And somehow that term stuck. And we have your major studios, we have your mini majors, which is a weird term in the in-between, and then we have your independents. But if I said to you, was Civil War by A24 an independent movie, what's your answer? It was one of the bigger movies of the year, but the reality is technically, yes, it's independent because A24 is an independent film studio. Or what about Longlegs right now with Nicolas Cage? Neon, that's an independent film, but it's one of the biggest films at the box office right now. So it's a tough question to ask, because the reality is that the independent moniker can mean a lot of different things. It could just mean it wasn't created by Warner Brothers or Paramount and the legacy companies. It could mean, yeah, it was created by a little dude that had an idea in his basement and he got 5 dudes together and they created a film and it was truly indie. Or at the end of the day, it could just mean that it was totally funded and financed and created outside of the system with no internal capital. So there's a couple different ways we can look at that. But I think this is a more important stat. What would you guess is the percentage of the industry that is independent?
Well, based on the definition you just gave me, like not part of a major studio, percentage of total gross or number of movies or what?
So let's do total number of productions per year.
Total number of productions.
Which is correlated to gross.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I totally don't know. But I would say the studios make, I just really don't know.
Yeah.
I know they make the big blockbuster movies.
They do, yeah.
But so in quantity, maybe it wouldn't be that big compared to everything else. But I would assume that they take most the revenue. I would guess that they would take 30% of the revenue, but I don't know.
Yeah, so it's about 72 to 75% is independent. Okay. Which that's where we do have some years where if we actually just look at gross revenues, that number, because that's why I say it's correlated, not directly linked, because there's obviously some years where the box office really takes up. But lately, we actually see that 75% is holding up a major portion of the industry, and that's anywhere from $127 to $154 billion is the independent market. Okay. And now that number also isn't counting all of the really small independent films that that's what we often think about when we say the word indie, and that's your buddy who just got a little camera and has got an idea for a movie and you pull together a crew and you just film in your backwoods in Ohio, and that's indie filmmaking, right? And there's a lot of that's not even quantifiable because it's not reported and we don't know about it and it never hits the screen. And so actually I think that number is quite a bit larger. It's hard to also quantify the value of those films, right? Because the budget doesn't actually equal value. Anyway, I won't geek out too much about that. But the point is, if we actually dive into the market that is film and television, and we know that about 75% is independent, then pair that statistic with this statistic, which is 65 to 72% of Gen Z reports wanting to become a creator. Now, creator is a big term. And the creator economy is also kind of a misnomer. The creator economy, the way I look at it as a Gen Z millennial individual, is that at the end of the day, creator can be anything from me creating cat videos on the internet. I actually don't like cats very much. I don't know why I bring that up so much. I love dogs. I'm going to say dog videos from now on. But dog videos on the internet, or I'm creating a $100 million blockbuster with Disney. That is a creator, right? And it could be my craft is script writing, my craft is, director of photography, or it could be I'm an influencer and I like creating educational videos about blockchain and AI or other cool things, right? It's a wide swath. But if we know that now the top reported desire and demand for Gen Z And Gen Alpha is not to go be a lawyer or an astronaut or a doctor. They want to go become creators of some sort. They want to be creative. They want to create content online. And you're seeing so many more people do this, right? I might be creating a sort of, a med tech company, but I'm documenting the whole thing as an influencer, right? Like there's this crossover because we live in this parasocial reality of the digital community. And so knowing those two stats, 75% of the industry is independent, 72% of Gen Z reports want to become a creator.
That's high.
It's extremely high.
That feels high.
Let's even call it half that.
Okay.
35 and 35.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a ton of content that's about to drop on the world, right? And then pair that with the concept of artificial intelligence driving down the cost of production. Even if we don't factor in Gen AI, we just factor in the ways in which we go about setting up shots, the ways in which that we're able to utilize cameras and sort of categorize our different, pieces of footage. AI can drive down the cost, or the way that we do VFX, all that really post-production is where that comes into play. We can go create really cool movies for much less, right? Knowing those sort of three things, that means there's a large amount of content that is coming into the world that is independent, that didn't originate from the studios. And I think that's a really cool thing, because if we go back in time, we're all sitting around, cavemen and women in caves, drawing on the walls, telling stories. That was the original storytelling medium. It was, vocal, it was shared, it was drawn, and then of course over time we have music and we have painting and we have books. And then finally we get to a point where we have moving pictures, which is the newest form of storytelling when we think about it, which is also something cool to think about. Is film and TV is a young industry. It's only about 100 years old. We're still figuring ourselves out. So a lot of these are growing pains, also accelerated by the fact that we now have crazy technology like AI. So not only are we sort of like on our teen awkward growth stage as an industry, we're doing that with some of the craziest innovations of technology that have ever occurred. So that's a really interesting phenomenon that occurs. But if we think about the fact that we have already a large independent industry, because so many more individuals today can go produce a film compared to the 20s when you needed to have a ton of money to even make a film because cameras weren't cheap, right? We no longer live in that era. So you have that. Then you have a generation that's upcoming that says, hey, I'd love to get into the creation of media, whether that's alternative content, YouTube channels, podcasts, or that's a whole film or show, right? All of that is storytelling to some degree. Most of it. Arguably some of it's not, but there's a lot of it that is. And then we pair that with the fact that the cost of production, the ability to produce is going down drastically. That then means that the independent market is not getting smaller. The independent market is getting bigger. So what do those folks need? At the end of the day, they need a platform that can empower them to deliver the stories to the audiences that they actually are looking to hit. Because at the end of the day, I can go make a $2 million movie, and, I don't have $100 million to go market to the world and put it in theaters and have billboards on, Hollywood Boulevard and, across London and, all that. Like at the end of the day, you need a platform that allows for you to find your audience. That's what's really important. So
what makes you think you can do that?
Yeah.
Where do you get the audacity to think that you can actually find my audience for my movie? Because that's not easy.
Couple different things. I think one, if you think about the innovator's dilemma, some of it comes with the unique understanding that when exemplified, it's sort of on a team level, when sort of, put into strategy, when built out in technological form, is just able to tackle a problem so much faster and better. I think that's where it first comes from, is my team understands the problem from both the fan side and the filmmaker side better than I would say anybody else in this entire industry. Okay. I'm not saying that there aren't folks out there who know it super well, but they don't spend every day obsessed with this problem like we do.
That's a good start.
And so that's a great start. It's like, I know my team is obsessing over this every single day. And that started with just me and Daryl. And that has become this team of, now we're over 25, team. And we just have an awesome team that we're all obsessed with that problem. Okay. Which is either how do we empower the filmmaker, or how do we create fan experiences they never had before with this digital theater? Whether that's, it was so easy to discover that movie, and I had a pleasure watching that cool Michael Douglas movie called The Game last night because I just scrolled to find it. Or, wow, I got to sit there and watch Tom Holland premiere his new film on Kino, and I asked him a question, and I'm never ever going to forget that moment in my life. And I'm also going to tell all my friends to go watch that movie, right? Both of those are important. So I think one, it starts with that. It's a team that's obsessed with the problem and understands it better than everybody else. I think it's two, we have the advantage of being able to build our technology from the ground up in a more efficient manner. We don't have decades of legacy that we have to deal with. We don't have, levels of bureaucracy that we have to deal with. At the end of the day, we can go, hey, we know the problem, so now let's build a solution for it, and let's build the solution in the best way possible, because that's our job to do that. And then I think finally, at the end of the day, we can be nimble and quick because we are a startup. And we can also work and partner with some of the coolest folks in the industry, and we already are. The final bit, and this one is unique and not philosophical. Those are sort of just core to any startup, really. The startups that win are the ones that tackle those first three. The final one is timing, which any good VC would look at and know that that is sort of a critical piece that not every startup can get right. There's a lot of great startups that had the first three and it just wasn't their time. And for us, I have never seen, really in the past month or 2 months, I have never seen greater feeling of product market fit than I have now. Because the core thesis that Daryl and I had at the beginning, which is that we saw this onslaught coming, we knew that the filmmaking industry, sort of those who were actually doing the work, had a lot of frustration, and that they were sort of, there's this pent up just feelings and energy. We saw a double strike happen. And then a lot of folks said, oh, back to business as usual. We all struck, everything's great now. And we said, no. I promise you guys, it's not back to business as usual. And now in the past couple months, we are working with some of the biggest names in the industry because they are saying, you guys.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.